Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cat's Track. We post an interview with an amazing Canadian each weekday for your daily inspiration. Today, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Matt Young. Matt was born in Fenelon Falls, Ontario. He's been married to his amazing wife for 20 years, and they have two boys in university. Very proud parents. Matt is extremely passionate about preserving the youth sport space, MBT activity sport. He believes that this is a dress rehearsal for life, and I could not agree more. Please find his full bio attached. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Catherine, thanks so much for having me on this morning. I'm really excited.
I'm glad you're here. May we start with the questions that I sent over?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so the first one's the most challenging spot in the last few months for you.
Yeah, I think the most challenging spot in the last few months, because we work with a lot of sport organizations and groups, is being obviously with the COVID, it's been the lockdown and the cessation of sports. So it's really been challenging to try to get people to say, hey, this is a great opportunity now that we're forced to take a break, that maybe we work on the business because we're not in the business. And where a lot of people have, in my opinion, just made the mistake of trying to rush back to normal, I think this is an opportunity for people. And I want to see us take as much advantage of this opportunity as we can.
Excellent. How are you finding when you're coaching many leaders, right? How are you finding their response to that?
I think once it's shared with the leadership, they understand it. It makes sense. It's just very hard, and full respect to them. It's very hard because they're being pulled in so many different directions. When are we going back? When did the kids go back? What's happening? And nobody really knows the answer, because this isn't something that the virus just holds up the hand and says, okay, June 15th, I'm done, so you guys can go back to normal. So it's the unknown, and people, as you know very well, people just don't sometimes struggle with not being in control and not being able to have that definitive timeline or date. And it's a struggle.
Yeah, I sure found it a struggle. I also have a hard time with it not being in control. So oh, thank you, Matt. And the top three things that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, I think the top three things is, number one is, if we're not connecting the dots, experienced leadership matters. I mean, and this is, playing out on a global scale. We can no longer, and it doesn't relate to the youth sports space. Of course it does. That's where my passion is. So I talk about it all the time. We would never, in 20 years of business and private business, we would have never given the keys to a volunteer who had not been properly trained to come in and run an organization and run a business with very little people or process experience. So and we're seeing that playing out in one of the most important offices in the world right now. Experienced leadership matters. And so we can't take that for granted. We have to, and I go back to your first question. This is why it's a great opportunity to start to hone our skills, sharpen our saw, whatever kind of euphemism you want to use. This is the opportunity to do that. So that's the first thing that I've really noticed. Second thing is that I think it's really important that money cannot be our sole currency, because we're seeing what the limitations are of that. If it is the sole currency, it's either feast or famine. And by that, I mean, there's no time like the present to review things like values. And you talk about them all the time. The values are how we're living. Values-based business, values-based practice. Because we have to, if we want people to come back, given not only the economic constraints, but why is this important? We need to show more value than just the straight economics of it, just taking someone's money, just the transaction, because people are going to have options on one hand, and then on the other hand, people's options are going to be limited. So if we're not showing value in any of our businesses, we're going to be in trouble. And last one is, with everything that's going on and people like just manic about that, control the controllables. So a lot of times it's such a waste of time and energy to try to hypothesize and control things that aren't in your control. When are we going to come back? What are we going to do? What's going to happen next? Use this time, again, like we've said, to really take stock. What can be different? What changes should I make? Can I make? Should we be making as a individual, as a family, as a leader, manager, mom, dad? What kind of things? We were in a hamster wheel. Everyone knows it. We were in the rat race, the hamster wheel. We've been forced to have that wheel slow down, and in some cases shut down. What's next? What's our 2.0, whether that's a personal or professional? And, I just think it's a huge waste of time and energy trying to control the things we can't control when we really have a great opportunity to get back to some of the things that we should be controlling. So those would be the three big things that I would suggest, that we take stock in.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. May I also ask a question? Again, you're dealing with so many leaders. I'd love to know how they're addressing mental health throughout their organization.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's got a variety of different answers because, again, we talk about now we're not getting that external stimulus, constantly flying in our face. We have to look inside ourselves. Are we going to have jobs? Are we going to be able to come back to the same kind of things? Are we going to get better? There's loneliness. Of course, there's loneliness because we're isolated. We're forced to do things that we're not naturally inclined to do. Spend more time with our significant others. Spend more time with our families, and we're seeing some of the great sides and the great parts of it. You see families together in the parks, people saying, oh, this has been great for our family unit. It's been great to reconnect with our kids who we lost that connection with. It's been great to reconnect with my significant other. It's been great to reconnect with myself. I read, I did this, and I know, Catherine, this, the spiritual, the human development is the spiritual, intellectual, social, emotional, and physical. It's all wound into one. One is not more important than the other. So I think this has really given leadership a great opportunity to take stock in that. And I also think that people are struggling and the vulnerability is a lot higher. We're going to see some of the unintended consequences of that, as we get back to normal and return to play on both sides, the positive and the, people reaching out for help.
I agree. Thank you, Matt. And the last piece with your good news or legacy story that you'd like to share.
Well, I think, getting back to, you asked a question and it was a great question because it forced me to think about, what is happening that is good. And of course there's good, the theory is, or the saying is, don't ever waste a great crisis. And, I think I want to get back to the good news of listening to how many people have, like we talked about, really taken stock in themselves or in their family unit, in their business. Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of leader do I want to be led by? Where do I want to go in my new path? Because what the virus did and what this experience did is it really exposed a lot of the jobs that are, quite frankly, dispensable, especially from the first shutdowns. It was really vulnerable. It showed the vulnerability if something like this happens, which jobs are essential and which jobs can be, can pivot, can automate, can do things differently. We don't have to be in 1 hour meetings all the time because we can hop on Zoom. We don't have to fly across the country because we can have a digital meeting. And now everyone knows how to get on a digital meeting and behave. So I think that has been a good news because we can use that technology, we can use these experiences to create a less stressed environment, in my opinion, without always running around and just the physical and mental toll we put on ourselves by chasing the cheese and trying to work our way through the maze of life. I think that's been one of the best news stories. You look at what's happening, free webinars, podcasts, advice, that's coming out. All of this information that would not be available to everybody is now available to everybody. So it's great to see people taking advantage of it. It's great to see people learning from it, being thankful for it. And again, there's no better time to rebuild or build it back better, with a consumer first, shareholder second mentality. So I think that's probably one of the things that I've noticed is probably a good news story that's coming out of this.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have one other question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You live in BC, inside the inner part, where is it?
North Vancouver. Yeah, I'm in North Vancouver, but right now I'm in the interior. So
okay.
I'm in Salmon Arm, halfway between Alberta and British Columbia.
Oh, very nice. What are some of the emerging areas that are happening in that area in terms of the booming? I know many are decimated. What are some of the good news stories that are happening out there?
Well, I think in the smaller towns, it's forced people and families to go outside and get active. And again, because I'm super passionate about movement, activity, and sport, I think that's great because it helps our it helps our mental well-being, it helps our physical well-being. But in terms of towns, rentals, home renovations, purchasing campers, purchasing things like dirt bikes, ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, bicycles, e-bikes, tours, the things that you can do in small groups as per the recommendations, but really taking advantage of the communities that are in your own community. So instead of everybody leaving every summer or everybody not having access because the tourists have come into these small towns, we're getting the staycations and the tourism within the town. And I think that's really positive to connect the community, because again, sometimes when we're chasing those dollars, it pulls the community apart. And I think that when we have that break, my hope is that it pulls the community back together. So I think we're seeing some of that because we've had to focus on it. We've had to encourage people from our own communities to take advantage of the beautiful scenery, trails, and giving that access to people. So I think from a physical and mental health and well-being, I'm hoping that these communities have been revitalized in terms of really appreciating, hey, we live in a great space. There is lots to do here. We just got wrapped up in serving everyone else. So now is a great time for us to take stock and service ourselves.
That's awesome. I think that's happening here in the Calgary area too. A lot of staycations. I wonder if that's happening all around the world right now.
I hope so, because
Yeah, me too.
when you see things like Venice and the canal, rejuvenating itself, dolphins in there for the first time, you can see to the bottom. Don't get me wrong. I fully understand the economic need, driver, and benefit for tourism. So I'm not here saying that shouldn't happen, but I think a little bit of it's an and instead of an and/or. And I think before it was an and/or. You were either serving or getting out of the way of people that were coming into your communities and just taking and leaving. And now I hope that with responsible, sustainable government and planning, they can say, hey, listen, this was really helpful and beneficial. And that's what I mean, Catherine, when we say, I hope on the other side of it, we don't try to just rush back to where we were. I hope we can build it back better and people start using this time to say, hey, listen, this is a great opportunity for us to build this back better.
I love it. Very profound. Thank you, Matt. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. No problem. My privilege. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Everybody, that was my friend Matt Young. Amazing. Check him out online and check out his bio. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.